Back with Fantasy Author's Handbook. I am Phil, and we're here at the table to look at book number 5 of my 100 book challenge. You know what the 100 book challenge is, yeah? I have challenged myself to read 100 of the books, the physical paper books that I own, before I buy any new books. This is hard for me. I like to buy new books, but I'm committed to doing it. I'm doing it, and I am now 5% of the way there. And we know this because of mathematics, right? And thank goodness this is a 100 book challenge and not like the 63 book challenge, at which point I would be out to sea with the like percents and stuff. So what is book number 5? Book number 5 is Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth by Jack Kirby. These are the 2 collections from DC Comics. I just ordered these brand new and they came from Amazon, but so you can still grab these. These aren't sort of like, some of these comic book collection trade paperbacks are like here and then they're just gone, and all of a sudden they're like $60 on eBay or whatever. So you should be able to get these. I think you should. Let's take a look at Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, Volume 2. Now, of course, I didn't just start with Volume 2. You will see underneath here that I did, in fact, buy them both, and I have read this previously. This was my graphic novel or comic book collection from part of my reading scheme, which I now always have one of those going. So, read this one already. There's a video out there where I talk about this a little bit, and a video where I kind of unpacked them when they first showed up. So this is the first 20 issues here in volume number 1. And this is what is really effectively, I think realistically, and really essentially, the last 20 issues. These are the last of the last 20, the last half of the 40 issues that were actually drawn and primarily created by Jack Kirby, Jack the King Kirby. So let's start out with, I'm just going to flip this open because I'm having a little bit of glare action, and you want to see the inside of this, don't you? You really do. There's the man himself. And the ape pirate. Listen, so Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, this was born out of DC Comics' frustration at losing the Planet of the Apes license to Marvel. Yeah, and Jack the King Kirby, having recently defected from Marvel to DC, was tasked with creating something, like Planet of the Apes, but not Planet of the Apes, right, for DC. And so what he came up with he came up with Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth. What he came up with was not the Planet of the Apes. He came up with the planet of the apes, dogs, wolves, tigers, lions, leopards, dolphins, killer whales, snakes, crocodiles. I'm missing some. There's at least one telepathic lobster right toward the end, right? But like Planet of the Apes, the human population of the AD Earth, AD for after disaster, have descended into mute savagery, right? Just like in Planet of the Apes. And these anthropomorphized animals can all of a sudden speak English. There is actually kind of like a sci-fi kind of, explanation or conceit for that. But the humans these are just animals, literally. They call them, everybody else calls them animals. Here's this dolphin friends. I mean, it gets weird right away, and it stays weird. The first collection, the first 20 issues, was just nuts, man. It was just crazy. It was just whatever idea Jack Kirby had in the moment would just fly in there. But he was also establishing some, kind of running characters that we would see through there. The Prince of the Tigers is a cool one. This is Ben Boxer and his 2 friends, who are these mutant guys that have these cyclotron hearts because they're like radioactive mutants, and they can press a button on their chest and then they turn into, kind of steel. They're going to be in here somewhere, yeah. They look really pretty much exactly like the Silver Surfer, but okay. And anyway, so he's got these kind of groups of friends that come in and out. Um, but varying different. There they are. Varying different kinds of animals have all of these really sort of very different civilizations, and they sort of fight with each other. They battle monsters. I mean, there's monsters galore in this, and not everything talks. Sometimes they're just the Kamandi's in trouble there. The great Jack Kirby splash pages with the haunted house thing, just terrific, right? But they've sort of, all these animals have created their own little civilizations inside the ruins of the, fallen human world. The disaster, by the way, is never fully explained. Just something terrible happened. They think, was it A-bombs? We don't know, right? Nuclear war. Not really sure. But anyway, this collection, this collects issues 21 through 40. And let me see if I can find that. I think it's around here somewhere. With these, you can see, if you go like this, where the breaks are, because the pages are black on the sides. Yeah, this also includes the giant issue, which was number 32. They didn't do it at least at this point in DC, like Marvel would do giant size, which started their own number. So you have giant size number 1 right in the middle of the, Fantastic Four run or whoever. I have a bunch of the old giant size in my collection upstairs that, I love those, right? But in this issue, this giant issue, is basically one new Kamandi story, and then they reprinted the origin story, which isn't in this collection because we've already got it in the first one. But it does include, as sort of a special feature that they did retain, and it will be here presently, this fun little, Jack Kirby kind of, biographical sketch and tribute, right? And he honestly was just one of the greats of all greatness in the comic book universe. He just really was. But anyway, this run, these 21 through 40 issues ran through from September 1974 to April 1976, which was exactly the time that I was like peak comic book mega nerd. And I remember seeing Kamandi out there, but I was really up to what the spinner rack at my local White Hen Pantry was carrying. And if you're from suburban Chicago and you're of a certain age anyway, you'll know what I mean. So I don't really have a lot of Kamandi books back in the day, but was fully aware of them. And when I saw these, I was like, Kamandi, right? I need that. I need these. So I just went ahead and ordered them both and have regretted that decision in no way, right? But anyway, after issue 40, Kirby, I don't know if at that point, if he had just left DC, right? But he left the Kamandi series that he had created, and other artists. There's Dr. Canis. This is the Prince of the Tiger people. Just, oh my God. So just incredibly weird and cool. But Kirby left after issue 40. And so DC really obviously knew that was all we were really interested in, was the Kirby run on Kamandi. So these two are are literally Kamandi by Jack Kirby, and it stops at the end of 40, even though the run did continue with other artists. So, I don't know. It starts out incredibly weird back in the first volume, the first 20 issues, and it stays weird here. Just crazy, crazy, insane stuff. I think I want to go back to that giant issue because I think that had the map, if I remember correctly, too, because you need the map. Yes, there it is. The 2-page spread map of the world of Earth AD. But anyway, Jerry Conway took over as a cover artist and editor, whatever exactly that meant at DC, on issue number 34, and then took over writing duties too, starting with issue number 38. Well, Kirby was still drawing everything, or he was doing the pencils. First of all, here is your Gamma World campaign setting done. Um, see if I can find issue 34. Anyway, into these later issues here, there's the Jerry Conway as opposed to Jack Kirby cover, which is good. I mean, Jerry Conway is not, there's no slouch. And I'm not throwing shade at Jerry Conway from 50 years ago, but, when it's Kirby at this point in his career, you want it to be Kirby. And you can kind of see, I don't know if you've seen enough of, I've shown enough of this, but to me, it really felt like Kirby's contribution to this started to kind of fade away. The art was not quite as spectacular. I mean, that looks like, but there was just way more of that Kirby touch. That just, he really felt like he was almost kind of phoning it in, or starting to sort of maybe think about phoning it in. This issue does include the one that they sort of tie in Superman as a hero from a bygone age, from the pre-disaster era. That's pretty much the only tie back to the rest of the DC universe until it starts to get into, I think, later kind of weird continuity, bigger story stuff. But anyway, it was a little disappointing that it felt like the last really 4 issues just kind of went like, and... But that aside, right, do not let that stop you from reading this. What's great about Kamandi is just the pure craziness of it. It's just way, way, way over the top, like way over the highest peak of the top. Like somebody went over the top and then built a tower on top of it, and then Kirby built another tower on top of that. It's just crazy, insane stuff. There's a few moments where it starts to feel formulaic. Yeah, I mean, that can happen to the best of us, especially with the comic book schedule, right? Which is quick, write, draw, boom, 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 every month. Get this stuff out there. So, it's like Kamandi is treated like an animal and called an animal by, a tiger or a leopard or whatever. And then that just really pisses him off. And things go sideways from there. But they go sideways in a wild range of different ways that I just found, honestly, endlessly delightful. Both of these books made me laugh. I mean, I was actually shocked in some cases, and sometimes in a really good way, and sometimes in a way we'll talk about. It made me wonder all the time what Kirby was thinking or what he was smoking when he thought up this stuff. It's just crazy fun. It's fun, weird, wild stuff, as they would say. Just, it never really disappoints, again, until kind of it comes to the sort of end in the last, 3-4 issues or so. There's Superman, the Mighty One from the days gone past. There's Kamandi and Ben Boxer just flipping stuff. The Door, it was always just crazy big, over the top. Loved it. Is it all super great? Well, there are a few things maybe we can talk about, right? Let's talk about this, certainly in terms of writing. Travel times are really just ignored. So we've seen this world, and it's a big world. Most of what we're seeing, even though we did have that map, I should just leave the map open, of the entire world, most of what we're seeing here is happening in the ruins of the United States, different parts of the United States. But this is that's the entire world, right? Travel times are just kind of like, well, we're leaving Washington, D.C., and we're going to go find this other thing. And then they're just kind of in Ohio, which obviously is possible to do, but they're like walking from Washington, D.C. to somewhere in Ohio. That's going to take like a little bit of time, right? But, Kirby just kind of fast travels them there. And they just sort of arrive at parts of the U.S. that are hundreds of miles apart. And Kirby just decides, well, it would be cool to have them in Vegas, so they're in Vegas. Voila. Can you get away with that in this kind of monthly comic book that maybe not every kid is really getting every month and is kind of trying to figure out, oh my God, they got Kamandi. I heard that was good, and you buy issue number 14, and that's the only one you ever see again. So yeah, I mean, just get to the story, which I respect, yeah, but I think for the kind of contemporary reader, that's going to be a hard one. So like if you were really like I was, kind of unhappy with that one episode of Game of Thrones where all of a sudden the world was like a millionth of the size. And go run back and tell them that we need help, and then help arrives like apparently in a few hours. You know the episode I'm talking about. So again, for authors, you're going to want to be more careful about the distance from here to there and keep your world plausible. Kirby was kind of like plausible, hilarious. I have just created the United States of Lions underneath the dominion of the devils and just to the west of the gorilla communes. So plausible, hilarious. But it does, I mean, okay. So you just give them that. It's not really that big a deal. Some of the storytelling too, though, has that same kind of fast travel sensibility to it, right? Coincidences happen in real life, right? They do, and certainly can happen in stories, right? But in this case, it's taken to an extreme that really just feels lazy sometimes. I hate saying bad stuff, right? But Kirby, one of the greatest of all time, and also did stuff like basically, okay, Kamandi's leaving and he's just walking by himself into the sunset. And then 2 issues later, Ben Boxer is there and Kamandi wanders into frame and it's like, Kamandi, what are you doing here? Just they happen to kind of end up at the same place at the same time for apparently no other reason than Kirby was just like, oh, I want to do a Ben Boxer story. It'll be cool if he does this and that. And in which case I was kind of like, when I first started, I'm like, oh, here we go with that. They just happened to be there. And then 2 panels of insanity later, I'm like, I'm in. It's a Ben Boxer story. Let's go. They're back together. It doesn't matter, right? And, there's some, be prepared for a little bit of dated stuff, some of which is kind of fun and hokey that, Kirby is playing on the pop culture of the day. So there's this great Watergate story, right, which was happening at the time. This was 1975 and 76. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of fun. And then, I don't know. I mean, is this a warning? Right? Maybe it's worth mentioning that sometimes it slips into seriously WTF territory. Like these 2 panels of holy moly. No. So Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, this isn't a lesson in story structure, that's for sure, right? But more, it's a lesson in pure imagination and the joy of increasingly bizarre science fiction adventure stories. What could be bad about that? Other than, the occasional couple panels of, right? But if you are one of those people as a reader, right, you absolutely require more, I don't know what, thought put into things like plausible and immersive world building and story structure, it's not going to be for you. Kamandi is not going to be for you if you are somebody who, like, I cannot continue watching Game of Thrones because all of a sudden it took like a minute to get all the way across the continent, to save the guys on the rock and the ice of Frozen Lake. Or if you get caught up on that kind of thing, you're going to get caught up on that kind of thing in like page 2 of, issue number one, and it's going to be there the whole time, right? Coincidences just happening. The size of the earth is just what it is. Kamandi just, in some cases, even the characters are weirdly schizophrenic. Like Kamandi just all of a sudden just goes nuts and just does stuff. So it was definitely felt like it was just Kirby chasing down whatever idea. But if you can decide to turn off that requirement, just say, you know what, I get it. This looks like fun. Let's just not suffer over how long it takes to get from Washington, D.C. to Ohio, or whether or not Kamandi seems to have some form of strange mental illness that makes him just fly off the handle occasionally. And so much so that in at least one case, Dr. Canis, his dog doctor friend, was like, Kamandi, calm down. Like, what are you doing? No, no, no. You're misunderstanding what they're saying. Like, take it easy. And like Kamandi's like goes off in this quite a rage, sort of uh, like manic intensity of violence. If you can flip off that switch, that logical switch in your head, you will have a blast with this. You will enjoy Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, because it is created to be pure fun. It succeeded at being pure fun. Get both of these. Let's put them together in order so you can see what they look like. I'm hitting the tripod again, and I apologize for that, and I apologize for a little bit of glare. But this is Jack Kirby's Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, volumes 1 and 2. But Phil, you said you're always reading some kind of comic collection or graphic novel. What's next? Well, here we go. Now, we talked a little bit about judging people. We talked a little bit about, like holy moly moments. This is going to be all holy moly moment. Calm down. If you are an American gentleman of a certain age, then you understand what Heavy Metal magazine meant to people in like the late 70s and, sort of around that area. So this is the next graphic novel. I won't be able to really open this up and show you probably any of the pages, but this is Serpieri's Druna. This is number 2, Creatura Carnivora. I can show you the back because there's nothing else on there. And I can feel you judging me already. You don't judge me. You can't judge me. I mean, you're not the boss of me to judge me. Is it kind of sci-fi porn? No, I mean is Game of Thrones fantasy porn? Okay, so I have again like Kamandi, in so many ways not like Kamandi. I have already read number 1, and just sat down and read it in one sitting. Again, I can't flip through it, but these are not super long books. They're pretty short, but they're spectacularly heavy. Just really done very, very well. So I've read the first one. I'm going to the next one. There's 5 altogether, if I remember correctly. I have them all. So in that slot for comic collections or graphic novels will be Serpieri's Druna, starting with number 2 because I've read number 1 already. So you'll see these kind of boom, boom, boom. I might just do a video of all of them when I'm done rather than, okay, this was book number 7 or 5 or whatever. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, this has been Phil. This has been Fantasy Author's Handbook, the 100-book challenge where we transition from Jack Kirby's Kamandi to the very similar, in terms of it being post-apocalyptic science fiction, but rather more grown up, Druna by Serpieri. I will be seeing you soon. Oh my gosh, this 100-book thing is happening. I'm 20% of the way through. Is that right? Mathematics. Thanks, everybody. Keep watching, like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. And don't judge me for liking Heavy Metal magazine. There's a story behind that too. So anyway,